Indian guy comes to you, I'm going to put this together. We're going to do this. We're going to shoot it in I don't know how many countries. It ended up being 28. We're going to go everywhere. I'm going to do this thing. And he told me later when we started, and I told him, whatever happens the rest of our lives, we will all be known for this project.
You're listening to Potty Mouth Radio, the home of movies, music, television, and comedy. We watch a thing. We watch a thing.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to We Watched a Thing with Billy and Dave, although we don't have Billy, unfortunately, today. However, we are joined by a very special guest, Tarsem Singh Dhandwar, known probably better to most of you just as Tarsem, writer, director, visual stylist. Thank you so much for joining us, Tarsem.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, and my better half, Billy, as luck would have it, has been sent off to a design conference.
He has more important things to do, I understand.
Oh, he is very unhappy with the turn of events.
Okay. We can always reschedule. It's up to you. It's all good.
Not too long ago, we had director Jim Burkett on talking about his film Coherence and some TV projects, and Billy decided that was a good time to get COVID, so he missed that as well.
Excellent.
But thank you for joining us. I'm a massive fan of your work. This is a real treat. Obviously want to talk about your films, but I did want to mention you've done a lot of commercial work over the years, and as someone who by day it works in marketing, I have a huge amount of respect for very good TVCs, which most people don't make, but when they do come along, people make the argument, short films are hard because you've got to cram so much, and we'll try doing it in 30 seconds.
I do, yeah. I think, 30 seconds, 1 minute, whatever it used to be. I think it takes, and it's something that is a great playground. You get to learn all the toys, you get to do everything else, and this is kind of a field. Now it's kind of different. I guess anybody who has a telephone can direct. But back then when we kind of started, you just needed to get on the ground. You didn't know what a camera was, what you did, what the etiquettes were, and everything. And then advertising, I think it was a straight route back then. People did music videos so they could do commercials. They did commercials so they could do movies. When I did music videos, did not want to do commercials. I just loved them. Then when I thought I'd done what I wanted to do, then I started doing commercials, and then I wouldn't make a movie, and I didn't want to make a movie. I just loved it. Until today, I just keep saying, like, I love advertising. When most people say that, they're kind of looking at the regular crap they see on TV, I guess. But there is a niche and the stuff which is pretty phenomenal, great budgets, great this thing, great toys, and you get to learn. So I've loved it for what it is, not as a stepping stone. So when that happens, it usually works in your favor, and people can see that. I keep saying I'm like a prostitute in love with his profession. I'm like, I'd fuck him for free, but they pay me money, and I'm like, thank you, I'll take it. So it's an amazing playground that you get to hone your skill on. I mean, it's always been there from history, with advertising, and I think the relationship between clients and people has always been the same. I mean, even the Sistine Chapel is probably one of the best examples. I mean, like of the church going and hiring people that you really can't stand. The guy's a homosexual, and you get him to paint the ceiling, and then then you have the same censorship thing, or like, do you really have to have all those penises out? Then you start. So when you work with those clients, and they kind of want to do something edgy, and they want to pull you back and everything, that negotiation is just a short form of what you'll end up doing. It's like a sprint compared to a marathon, what a movie is. So it is the same medium, but it's a completely different race.
And you've got the added challenge, I would imagine, of, yes, you're trying to tell a story in this small amount of time and be visually engaging and all the rest of it, but you've also kind of got an imperative to actually make the thing, quote unquote, work for the client as well. It's all very well done. A 90-second short film that's fantastic, but
you have to know what unless you're thinking of one-off thing and then moving on. I always just thought it was a great medium to be in. So I never really looked at it as, like, let's fool the people once and make a ton of money. I just really look at it as, like all the new toys come out, I want to try this, I want to go to that location, everything. You just make it clear to them, and then you have to make sure if you're making it past the commercial, you're not doing the coolest thing in the world, because it's not a question of like the Bible, pearls before swines. It's just that you be making something that is not really for that audience. So you might fool them once or twice, but if you're talking about 30 plus years, which is what I've been doing, I love it. I love it. I like to know what the boundaries are, and then just burn your finger on the boundary. Don't cross it by a lot that they throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, I have to say, I didn't know until recently that you were the mastermind behind it, but my favorite TVC of all time is a Nike one that I believe the campaign was called Good versus Evil.
Yeah, with Cantona and all the soccer guys. Yeah, I
Oh,
loved it. Yeah, it was
absolutely.
wonderful.
I can still remember it. It played in cinemas here. I was at university at the time. I don't remember what film I was seeing, but I still remember the first time I saw that ad.
That's a great story to hear back when people sing. I don't know what the Super Bowl result was, but I saw that ad, and you get like, okay,
Oh, when
successful.
Cantona flips his collar and says,
Yeah.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Oh boy, yeah. Made that up on the
Fantastic.
day, yes.
So, obviously, music videos you mentioned. Certainly, I mean, Losing My Religion, I still remember the first time I saw that music video as well. But you did eventually come to features with The Cell. How did that come
I
about?
did. The Cell, I always wanted to do the fall first. So I remember when I came out of school, I mean, Fincher was our hero. And he kind of like, I think I came out of school and I just came out bolting. It's been my school stuff was amazing. It's been downhill since. That stuff was just absolutely unadulterated, singular vision with absolutely no compromise. And I tried to hold on to that as long as I could. So when I was doing after, actually, I did do one of the music video after that one. It's called Deep Forest, and I understand in
Oh, that
Australia
was, yeah,
there is a
sweet.
channel that used to
Oh,
start
can't
their
remember what it's called.
that was a run up for the fall because it was my niece going around the world on a tricycle. And I wanted to go to these different locations as many as I could. I mean, we were really going on the cheap in buses and economy with me, my sister to hold my niece, and then my producer, whose girlfriend learned how to work the camera. And we went all, and my girlfriend, who was a production designer, and we just went everywhere around the world just to see, because I was making these list of locations that I thought people wouldn't have seen, and some cliche locations mixed in for the fall. So that was a pre-runner. And then somebody told me that in Australia they used to play that on one of their version of whatever, the Discovery Channel or something, as an opening scene for it, as an opening when the channel used to open. I don't know, I've never seen it. Might be an urban legend that somebody told me, but that piece was pure me. Also, I just loved that video. So for me, sorry, the question was,
I just,
how did the
yeah,
cell come about?
yeah.
Well,
It's, I mean, a thriller I get, but for a first-time feature director, laying that concept out and
yes, you know what
describing the
though?
visuals, it must have been a hard sell.
No, it was a pretty it happened very quickly. And also, I now when I look at it, I go like, oh my god, they gave me a lot. But that time I was such a drama queen. I just come out from like doing things my way, or like I'll take my things and go, please work with somebody else. And I was doing that all the time in advertising, which is not a field to do it in. But I would pitch every 10 commercials that I would pitch, and I would say, these clothes, this song, this length, this. If they didn't like one thing about it, I'd say thank you, and I'd leave. And I'd just say, like, no, I'm just learning how to pitch. And I would do, I think the first probably about, 3 years, I've probably made the least amount of money on myself, apart from maybe PAs. Because I didn't have any expenses. I just loved, like getting into the field. So
Mm.
for me, just trying to make like for that. So I was getting ready for the fall, and then when this thing came along, they sent me the script, and I kind of looked at that and I just went like, oh well, it's a complete blank canvas. You go inside the head, and of course, you can't really blame writers or anything for it, because if they're writing for somebody visual, they've just written certain things inside, like we go inside the head and XYZ happens. And I just said, like, all that has to be thrown out. And I will work with the writer to make it up, who was fantastic with me. And I just said, all that, I'll just ask you that he goes inside the head and you write one line, or maximum 3 lines of what happens in the first episode, second episode, third episode, and then I'll make it up. So for me, when they approached me, I just told them, okay, I'll show you a lot of eye candy on what happens inside the head. And I originally wanted to do an action flick inside the head, and I had Julian Moore in mind. And I went in and then I pitched it to them on how the action would work. This is where the advertising stuff is. This can go like this. And they said, okay, great. Julian Moore, right? You got about $10. And I went like, no, this would take a lot. Then they just said like, well, then when they described to me, it has to be somebody for the finances to work and blah blah. I said, oh, you're talking about somebody like a Hindi movie diva, like J Lo. They said yes. I said, no, you mean like J-Lo? They said, yes. I said, no, you mean like anybody like, no, J-Lo is fine. And I went, okay, then I'll do that. And I remember I was shooting in Spain and they said, can you do a meeting with her? And I just said, sure. And I couldn't get out of the shoot. And I literally, the only time I ever flew the Concorde, I had a dinner, went, this was pre 9/11. So I guess somebody checked my luggage in. I went in a small plane, landed in front of the Concorde. They took me in there, went and made the dinner with J-Lo, pitched it to her and showed her the eye candy. Because I just said, I don't know what's going to happen inside the head. But this is my background. I come from a visual thing. You have to give me carte blanche and it's a blank page when we go inside. She said yes. And I went like,
Wow.
okay. So then we went back and they just said, okay, your movie's green. And I was like, oh, do I really want to make this film? I want to make the fall first and everything. And then just I made it in such a way that I burned so many bridges that I had to make the movie. And I just said, okay, well, let's make it. So when I started it and anything happened, like, if she didn't, or the only thing that I had with her was, and then of course later on people told me that, you don't do that. When I just had a particular look for her in mind and it was her hair that I wanted a particular way. And the first day she came, she said she wanted a different way. And that was such like, are you crazy? Like, really? I mean, I'm making this film. And now I realize that everybody just said, don't you know you don't fuck with women's hair? And I was like, well, I wish you told me then because I really took it on. And then after that time, everything was okay for me. And then now I look at it and I go like, oof, they gave me a lot, for what I wanted to do because nobody had a clue what I wanted to do. I just sat down and went with the writer and I just said, okay, now tell me when you go in, what happens? And he was describing all these things. And it was full of things like, she goes inside and there's down a corridor, there's 50 of his mothers, exactly the same, coming to him and saying, what have you done with my son? It was that kind of stuff. And I said, I don't know how to do that. So just tell me what's in each one. So he just said, okay, first time she goes in, let me try to remember now. She goes in, yeah, but I took each episode down to three lines to say it. So I just said, what does that mean? That all the he said, oh, his mother had many personalities. I said, right. So I just make three, identical, and I couldn't afford. I wanted to do a trip down. I couldn't afford, so I got triplets to play that part. And I just said, okay, I can't do CGI. I can't do this thing. I wanted to go to. Oh, sorry. I'll jump back to the one thing when I said when it didn't go action. The first day that The Matrix came out, I went to the studio executive to see The Matrix, and he said, your movie's greenlit. And I said, I don't want to make that film. And he said, but you've been pitching these things to us, for a while. And I said, yes, but now anybody with $10 in their pocket is doing that. And they just said, then what do you want to do? And I just said, well, give me a day and I'll see if I have an approach. And I came back and I said, okay, opera. We go inside and it's theater. They just said, Americans do not like theatrical stuff. It will not work. And they just and they named one of my favorite films. They just said Dracula was the only film in America that opened above 30 million. Coppola's Dracula above 30 million, but didn't make 100 million, which means everybody wanted to see a movie like that, but not that. And I just said, I get it, but that film is, literary material that you're doing something with. This is literally, a commercial, like serial killer crap. And if you're going to take this, to the next level, we'll do this with it. And I just wouldn't budge. And then I just said, no, and they just said, the problem is, I think that in America, they call it the wrong kind of laugh, that the people will laugh at the wrong bits. They will just laugh at, oh, that's ridiculous. The costume looks like that. And I just said, okay, well, then I'll make up with some really hardcore shit up front that they don't laugh in the third act. And they said, what? I said, I don't know. Then we guys sat down. We started saying, okay, he bleaches girls, he rapes them,
hanging from the ceiling,
himself with his skin, masturbates on them, then blah blah, all this stuff. And then, of course, you overcompensate. And the first time we showed it to people, they were like, whoa, I can't and I went but this is what you said, you want to do. And unfortunately, they took a hammer to it and they just said, take out all that stuff. I said, if you do, in the third act, they're going to laugh at him because he's wearing very ridiculous stuff. And they tried it. And people just didn't find him credible at all. Then they let me have it. To a certain extent, they just said, well, take this part out. So it was take this out, put that back in. So same negotiation like in advertising. So I worked a little bit on that particular one. And we ended up with a guy that creeps you out enough that in the third act, when I just said, my thing was, if he comes out in a sari and a tutu, people won't laugh at him. I just want him to be menacing up front. And so it became operatic. So I went with that, and I think, it worked. And now I can realize what a great drama queen I was. I remember D'Onofrio called me from when they were doing the what's it called, junket, and they were in San Diego, and he said, hey, everybody's saying this is a visual film and they're looking for a director, and you're not here, you're shooting something somewhere else. And I said, yes, but you know what, they changed 2 shots in my trailer. And there was silence, and he said, you have a lot to learn. And I was like, whoa. I said, this is one of the original bad guys, and if he's telling me I'm being like unreasonable, maybe I am. And truly, that was it. They changed when I was working with them on the trailer, they changed 2 shots. I said, well, then fuck it, I'm off. And I was gone. And of course, then you calm down later and you realize, there was but it did commercially, very well for them. And they only realized that in the last 2-3 weeks before release that it's going to do very well. And it was very polarizing. So I've never really, apart from now over time, I've never done a movie that was about 50 in tomato meters, because you love it or you hate it. And those are the two things that'll get you hired. Nobody's going to hire you if you think he's okay. Everybody's got a brother who's on a cousin who has a drone, and somebody knows how to film this, and they'll hire family. So you have to have people.
You're
who
never
just
going to
think like,
please
okay.
everybody. I would have much better to have this many people that love what you've done than this many people that think, yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, love or hate, they're both okay. For me, it's comme si comme ça, that's dangerous. So I just go, okay, I'll go for it. And now, actually, over the years, now finally the fall has become, recommended by a tomato meter. It's gone above 60, and I don't really know how to take that, because it is always at 50%. Now, just thinking one of my favorite films sits out there. It's Birth, Jonathan Glazier's one. And it's a very polarizing film and gender based. Like, usually women hate it, and it's just for different reasons. And for me, I love that film. So I just thought it was at 50. And now when I look at it, over time, I think a lot of people really shat on it, and people like, Ebert and all really supported it. And over time, a lot of the, younger generation became critics and have gone on tomato meter, and it's kind of started going upwards. And a lot of the old critics, who hated it, have died miserably, I hope. And
All gone to prison.
All gone to prison. But yeah, both. No, death is good. So for me, they've just gone off the radar, and the newer guys have come out and said, this is not as shitty as advertised. And somehow it's found, like a culty audience, and it's doing fine.
Good things take time sometimes.
Yes. Well, true.
So that was The Cell. And I saw The Cell in cinemas when it came out, and was like a lot of people, oh my God, I've never seen anything like this. It's only later that I've sort of come to it's really rewarded repeat viewings, things that I didn't recognize at the time, that I've sort of, I love when you can watch a filmmaker's works, and you can, I like to think you can get a sense of the things that they love that they've brought in. So there's artworks that I assume meant something to you, like Odd Nerdstrom's paintings and Damien Hirst and things. And I didn't get all of that back in the 90s. I just thought it was a cool looking film. But
exactly,
latterly sort of recognizing these things as I've sort of been exposed to them, it's a wonderful thing that's sort of every time I watch it, it gives a little something
it's kind
more.
Of a good little Trojan way to go, where the audience you're showing a serial killer film to wouldn't be that familiar with that particular stuff. And that can be mistaken as originality. Like they say, originality is the art of concealing your source. So if you're making an art house film and you're putting this stuff in, people going like, that's beyond cliche. So the idea of tipping your hat to somebody and actually just doing a total rip-off are two different things. But for me, the person that everybody told me, you've got to take that off, because everybody had some scene they had a problem with. The writer was just that horse. He said, don't split the horse. Don't sit there. And I was saying, why? Because everybody had something. The the cameraman, he said, in the end, when the two guys are talking, there's those frames that appear. He looks like a Moroccan serial killer. I said, yeah, I love it. And I said, everybody had some problem. I said, no, no, I'm not listening to you at all. I'm just, this has to go this particular way. So the horse one, when I finally went to see the writer at his house, he has a horse farm. And I went like, hey, this is not fair. People have children. I'm showing like, somebody really abusing their boy and beating the crap out of them. And you're asking me to take out the horse because I said, no, it has to stay there for particular disturbing reasons. And I left it in. And of course, the lawyers came after me. They said, anybody's okay. But the only person who has made a fortune out of suing people is Damien Hirst. You don't take a Damien Hirst thing. And I said, that's okay. But can I show you where he got that from? They go, oh, but it's his work. I said, no, let me show you. And I sent them because there was a guy in the 1920s, it's in the museum somewhere in America, whose body has been split up into that particular thing to show the interior
Oh,
organ.
wow.
And so I just went like here, and they went, oh, we would love for him to sue us because he'll get us all. And he never came after because he knew that there was one piece that is credited to him,
Yep.
but many people have done it before. Not one person had done it before. So I just thought like, no, everybody had something they had a problem with, but because it's this, and people say, oh, my work's really bright and it's cut like this, and I go like, yeah, I'm Indian. If I showed you a lot of films where I got it from, you'd go like, this guy's just ripping everybody off. It's just that I grew up in completely different places since I was a child. My father worked in the airlines, so I had free tickets. So everywhere that I went, I just hodgepodged everything, and kind of you have to be aware that the audience that you're making it for might not be that aware of that. And so in this particular one, when I just said action I wanted to do, but when they said Matrix is out, I said no, now they're just going to think we're doing the poor man's Matrix. Because you're giving me 1/3 the budget or 1/10 the budget to compete with that. And everybody's making this, so let's just go theater. And theater doesn't, to lack of a better word, it doesn't date. It's predated. It's like Mammoth speak or Kubrick speak. When it comes out, it looks dated. It looks like, oh, this is so old school. And then 30 years later, you'll watch it. It's exactly the same, and everything around it looks old. And
Yep.
so for me, I was very aware of that. That for the Fall and the Cell, I had that in my for the Cell. I did it through theater, but the Fall, I just said, okay, do it through locations because
I,
no matter what effects you do, after some time they will look dated.
yeah.
And the thing to do it is to just go without the effects, and you go to real locations, and it's kind of like a timeless story.
Yeah, no, completely. Before we get to the Fall, which we'll do
Okay.
right now, but
No.
the Cell would have been, I believe, what the first time to work
Akash,
with
yes.
Aker.
Oh my God, you have the strange book. I have that book. Nico gave it to me.
Oh,
Yes. Well,
what
we
a
guys were.
singular person.
Yes. It was love at first sight. I mean, like I had seen Dracula. The thing of it is, we were aware of Aiko long before she came to America. Me and my, now her husband, because she passed away, Nico, who was writing The Fall with me. We were big fans of her in school. We used to watch her work, very hard to get, but we'd get these library because she was directing commercials in Japan. And we used to watch her stuff, her print work, and we think like, oh man, and of course a lot of the stuff was just written. And I would just go like, this person is from a different planet. And then of course then we saw Mishima. And I was so blown away. And then we saw Dracula, and we said, oh, somebody preempted us, and now she's doing American work, but I want to work with her. So when I asked the studio, I'd like to work with Aiko. They just, oh, somebody like Aiko. I said, no, I'd like to work with Aiko. They said, oh, somebody like Aiko. I said, I'd like to work with Aiko. So they just thought, she's difficult and blah, blah, all the kind of stuff you usually hear when people just want an easy way through. And I just said, arrange that meeting. And they did. The first time I met her, and I just went, this is the person. And then when we were shooting it, my Italian girlfriend that time, she said, Nico, my classmate, and she was our hero. He said, I think he and Aiko are going out. And I was like, oh, shut up, you silly cow. She's like, more than double his age and blah, 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 blah. Like, get lost. And then when the movie was over, they came and said, like, we're going out. And I went like, oh my God. So it turned out to be the greatest thing because until that time, then always we just hung out together. She got married to my best friend. So on ground zero, whenever I would have anything, she would be at ground zero. We would just go like, this is what we want to do. And it is something that's not particularly liked by critics, which is, you call it putting the cart before the horse, I guess, that I would have these visuals. And I'll just say, what's the story that can take me on this journey? Like let's just work to our strong points and this thing. So I had always had the Fall idea for 30, close to 28 years before that, I'd seen this movie in which, you
Oh,
work
yo
with
ho
a
ho.
person, where you work by manipulating a child, by telling them a story that the child perceives differently. And I just
Yeah.
said, that's all I want, get the rights of it. And I had it in my head. And then I think close to 18 years of location scouting I was doing. So I needed somebody that it turned into a period piece because I tried to make it. I said it could be a contemporary piece or have been a lot more commercial. I just said if it became a contemporary piece, then it started to become a bit too comic for me because we're telling somebody about cowboys and they're thinking something else. But there isn't a place in the world, even like 20 years ago, where people hadn't seen cinema. I just
Mm.
thought like the person says something and the other person just is from a different planet.
Yeah.
The genres have not, nobody's seen Sergio Leone films or John Ford or Kurosawa or, Matrix or anything. And you're telling this person the story. So then it became a period piece that
Mm.
this person has never seen cinema. And then it worked from there. And then I just thought it worked even more to have like Aiko in there because she just, Chinese beyond Chinese whispers. Whatever you tell her, she would see it. So, like, when you try to get somebody to, go outside the comfort level, you always tell them, think outside the box. The problem with Eiko was she didn't know what the fucking box was. You tell her something, she would make something, and then you'd go out there, and D'Onofrio goes, that cape weighs about 30 kilos. And then Eiko would go, but does he have to walk in it? I go, it's his cape. Of course he has to. And then, too late. He doesn't have to walk in it. Then I say, okay, he just has to stand in it. Then he'll do this and throw it away. So I would just work around her. And I think one of the producers was saying, you can't do that. That's like every department saying the film according to my department. I said, welcome. Let them do it. And then if I have the power to veto it. If I just think, no, don't go here, go there. And that was the greatest thing about Eiko. She just wanted to say, like, if there's a singular person in charge, bang, she just served you. And then if you just said, if you changed it, she adapted immediately and just was incredible. So for me, the moment when she passed away, I just said, okay, for a decade, I'm not going to do any visual films. Now the decade has passed. And I think I'm going back to it. Not that I will look for anybody like her. There isn't one. And
No.
hopefully won't be. You just, pick from a different tree. But
Mm.
Echo was incredible. So for me, it just turned out really phenomenal that Echo and Nico started going out, and then we just stayed together all the time, and we were pitching ideas against each other, and
It's
not
it,
against each
it,
other, with each other. Sorry.
it's completely apparent in the work how closely
Mm.
you and she worked together because I mean greatest costumes in the history of cinema as far as I'm concerned, but
Mm.
there are so many instances where they're not just clothing, they're part of the landscape of the transition, like the priest transition in which
Yes.
I can't wrap my head around how you
Yes, so
did it.
very difficult. I'll have to kill you if I explain it. No, but that's funny enough. That one has less to do with wardrobe. But every now and then she would say things that would just make you think differently. I remember she said, like, could we do a thing where the person's clothes are the set? And I was like, that sounds like a clever thing to say. It'll never fucking happen. I don't know what you're talking about. And we moved on. And then somewhere in the cell, we came to this particular area where I just, like, I'd made a list. She goes in, she gets, let's see, the first time that she goes in is, I'm trying to remember the first trip.
First one was I think the box and then fall
No, I
upwards.
think it's not remember. But basically, she goes in. She sees she goes in. She sees some form of his baptism. Then she follows the boy. The boy
Yeah,
takes,
yeah.
gets scared. He takes her to the. Here's the one-liners. He takes her to where the victims are. One of the victims, carries her and takes her to the bad guy. And he goes, "What?" or something, and she gets scared and presses the button. That was it. And
Yep.
I just have to make up all those things to go there. So they're like 4 lines. And for me, on that particular one, one of the sets that I was trying to make was in Mark Romanek style. I just got literally a gold box. And then it came to me that if he's tied out there, he can't really approach her because if he does, she'll panic and go. So something should hold him back. And I remembered Eko's line that how about a roommate was said, and I said, you know what? We could make the thing holding him back because he likes
Curtains
piercing,
come.
his escape, and then you make that go around the set, and then that will come off. So that kind of sparked ideas just because she just thought from a different level. And I've just always welcomed that, especially when you're doing a visual film. If you're going to drink from the same well, it's going to look like everybody else's stuff. So it just turned out to be that I was drinking from different wells. Just nothing unique. But like they say, your characters, your genes, your genotype plus phenotype, your genes plus your environment. There's nothing special about my genes. There's a 1.4 billion of me in India. But I traveled a lot as a kid in Iran, around the world, and everything. And I think that's kind of what made my field of watching, visual field, a lot more diverse than most people at that age.
I've heard you mention Parajanov in interviews. It sort of coming back a little bit to getting an idea of a filmmaker, the things that a filmmaker loves through their work. Yours are a lot more interesting than most, I think, and in some cases more obscure. So people don't. Parajanov, who certainly when I saw The Fall the first time, I would never have heard of. But subsequently having sort of come across color pomegranates.
There's a lot of Iranian filmmakers also that do that style was around, but not as concrete in stories as Parajnav's was. And I discovered Parajnav quite late. I was in college, and my girlfriend at that time, her style was exactly like Parajnav, and she never recovered from this. She had never seen a Parajnav film. She just always thought that was the tableau of approaching in 90 degrees. And then the first time in third year in college, we went and saw a Prajna film, and it destroyed her. She just literally thought that I thought I had a really unique take on something, and this guy's been doing it from 20 years before me. And for me, I just felt like, okay, well, let's just, we might be the dwarves on the giant shoulders. So let's just, climb on, take that approach and use it in some subjects. In this particular one, I'm trying to define a genre, tell a story to a genre, to a person who has never seen a movie. So that's the best field to have. One person comes the Occident and one from the Orient. You can make that work. So for me, that's what I looked at. I just took it and moved on. But she never recovered. And I should show you our school stuff. It was pretty pre-Prajnav, and it looks exactly like Prajnav. We had never seen anything like that. And when I saw that,
incredible.
It kind of was heartbreaking that, we thought we were kind of, reinventing the wheel here. And oh no, the wheel's been around for a while. And then so we just moved on from that. So Prajna was somebody I found much later and still adore and love.
And I'm
Because I was a
assuming
very big Tarkovsky fan back then, more than Prajnav. And then when I kind of discovered Prajnav, he was a lot more endearing to me, a lot more playful.
it's something about the visual language that, and Jodorowsky's another one that I'm very, very fond of, where a lot
Him
of
also I
people don't
discovered
kind of
much
respond.
later,
but
and everybody would always
things like
just
Holy
say, like,
Mountain, I just think are amazing.
yeah, the thing is, I have a friend, Steve Berkman, who does all the prints for me, including the fall ones and the one back there. He was obsessed with Jodorowsky. And I wasn't ever the biggest Jodorowsky fan. And I see Jodorowsky fans take me on quite badly. They go like, oh my God, he's doing like, Jodorowsky for children. And I go, yeah. And I go like, yes. And where's the problem? You can't do Jodorowsky for adults. Jodorowsky does that. So you just have to take that and move on and, mix more things with it. So for me, I think there's about one or two things that I really I remember birds coming out of a guy's mouth, which he had done coming out from somebody's stomach. But apart from that, I see the Parajna reference a lot more.
Oh, I think it's that's a lot.
And the Jodorowsky thing that I like is that his stuff looks so heart on sleeve childish, and I love that. It's just when I look at it, I just go like it's literally got such a something that Spike Jonze has a lot of, such a naive art approach that I really love. It's just so now this is how it should be. I don't need millions of dollars. I don't have to make it look like that. It can be dirty, and here it is. And I was actually going for a clean image, so I just polished the turd.
And I'm assuming that you have an affection for stop motion, because
I do. I originally wanted to do
Way Brothers style sort of coming through in things.
True. I wanted to do originally documentaries in school, and then we had tells you how much of a difference a teacher makes. We had one of the worst documentary teachers ever. And it just so put me off documentaries, and good for me that I suddenly started looking at other things and started doing visual things and ended up doing music videos. But the first thing I was interested in school was animation, because it taught you so much about film, and you were so frame conscious about editing, about sound. I think the greatest sound designers in the world are animators, because they're so frame conscious on pacing and everything like that. So I was obsessed with, like Street of Crocodiles and Brothers Quay. And for me, I met one of the twins, like I'm
Oh,
talking about a
wow.
decade before the fall, to do that sequence. I just said, like, this is what will happen. I don't have the money. And I was going around all the time when I was doing advertising and all that, telling people, like, kind of like the Godfather, that I can pay you for a job right now, and then one day I'll come and ask for a favor. That day may never come, and blah, blah, blah. So I was doing that everywhere and seeding it. And with him, one of the quiz I talked about, that there's a girl who falls, and that particular sequence, this pre-animation, so you can do whatever style you want. It's the only thing that I wanted to have nothing to do with. I was going to give it to the animator, and I just said, this is in her head, and this is the story she's heard so far. So you can make it that way. He said, great. And then 12 years went by, and of course I was still putting everything together. And in between, they did, even though it's in a completely different style, they did the animation for the movie Frida, in which
Oh.
she falls. And it's very dead, the Mexican dead, not
The
dead,
Day of the Dead.
the Day of the Dead thing.
Yeah.
And they did that sequence, but it was literally animation of a person falling and then going into their head. And I just said, well, I can't really go and ask them, that you remember we did a meeting and I pitched you this thing. So I just said, okay.
Yep.
So then I went and I saw these two German animators who I love. They'd done this thing called Balance that they'd got an Oscar for. And I just said, usually I always say that if I can afford to pay, if I do advertising, you get paid a lot. If I can't afford to pay, I just say you have complete creative control. So I told him, in this particular one, there's not much money. I can show you the rough cut until now on what the girl has seen, and I'll tell you the story. Can you make this? And they said yes, and they made everything with it. So, and they're also twins. So I don't know what the fuck it is about twins and doing stop motion. So
Yeah, weird.
they put that together and did an amazing job with it. All I did was I told them, I'll give you the in and I'll take an act. And in between is she's fallen, probably being operated on, and she's hearing these conversations, and she thinks they're trying to get secrets from her. And you can take that particular one, and then basically in the end, you come out of it. She wakes up from the dream, and then they just said, like, yeah, okay. And what they gave me, that was it. So I do love the sound design of animators always. Also, I like stop motion. I actually got a Grammy nomination for an animation piece that I did for a music video when I was in school for, I think, Lightning Seeds, and it was kind of like it's called pin screen animation. It's something that is so tedious that even animators go like, oh my God, because there were two films made in pin screen that time. One took 7 years, one took 5 years. They're about 3 minutes
wow.
long. One's called Mindscape and something. And I just said, okay, I'm going to do an assembly line process of that. And it was so tedious. And I just said, I don't want to do animation again. And just moved on from there and just gave it to these twins, and they made an amazing job out of it.
I've got so much respect for people who do stop motion. I've seen documentaries about Nick Park, and there was a film.
Watch the one about the
ago,
screen Russian animators, and you will think that these guys have it easy, because it takes 5, 6. Because it's literally a grayscale is dedicated by those things, those toys that you get with their pens, and you put your face through, and your face appears on the other side. It's like that, but there's like a few million pins, and you push from below, and the shadow of the pins gives you the grayscale. It literally looks like drawing with a charcoal. So it looks just like, so Russian. That is something that is really hard to do, and it just looks like you drew it with a charcoal.
I've never heard of. I'm making a note. I've never heard of pin screen animation.
Pin screen animation, and watch Mindscape if you can. It just looks like something.
Oh, well, seek it out, because I'm a big. I mean, Jan Schrankmeyer. I just love it. I love stop motion. If I find it one of the most engaging forms of animation, completely.
Great.
I wanted to ask you. I'm sure I've heard you mention in interviews before that, generally speaking, you haven't seen many child performances that you've thought were
None
great.
except one.
And I'm very much, and my friend Billy is as well. Very few child performances that we think are great.
But
Katinka,
it
we have
depends on
both
the
said,
school of acting that you choose. Because if you see a little princess, Coron's one of the original, it's phenomenal. But it is an affected piece. It is a particular type of
yeah,
acting. I had never seen, and otherwise you can have children be children and shoot them telephoto, and like, hey, you cut around that, but your plot is completely dedicated by them, and it's telephoto, and it's not the style that I had in mind. I
yeah,
chose the worst style possible to have a child for the performance that I wanted, but I'd seen it in one film. It's
Bonnet, yeah.
I just could not understand how they got this performance from a girl where the camera is not telephoto, it's physically between them, and near them, it's
Mm.
moving, and she is doing what she's doing. And I was obsessed. That's the only film reference that I showed Lee Pace or anybody. I said, this is the milestone. I've never seen anything like it, and I will find this person. That's why it took 9 years. And I just
Mm.
said, if this person doesn't exist, we're not making the movie. And the moment I found that person, I just said, sell everything. This is the person. And there was a little bit of a visa problem getting her down to South Africa. And I remember, my executive producer, Tommy, asked me like, hey, we can switch it. This is the girl that you were very interested in. I said, no, there is only one this person.
Katinka or
And
nothing.
it has to be that is the game changer. So for me, I just worked to her strengths to make that work. But I'd only seen it work once. I wouldn't say that that's like it is a particular type of performance that is phenomenal that she did. But if you look at Little Princess and everything, those are phenomenal acting things. But when I
Mm.
looked at movies, I found that at about 8 or 9, you could find incredible actresses. But before that, and I tried it with my nieces, it's always, I would have loved to have a family member in it. Like I say, when there's no money and you really need to abuse the children, is you should use family. And that's what I always did in music videos with my niece and everything, but none of them were right for the project when I was right. So I would always try it with my niece, and I realized that about 4 is when they will believe any bullshit that you want and they're genuine. And then from about 5 to about 8 or 9, they're dead. They're just acting in particular ways that you want them to. And then at 8 or 9, you find incredible actors again and actresses. And I just thought like, okay, so the person should be 4. So I was always looking for a 4-year-old until I saw the Katinka's tape. And I realized another thing bought me 1 year. And that was that she didn't speak English. So when the person was speaking them to English, she was trying to also formulate the language and thinking she was doing something wrong. And that bought me the 1 year that I wanted. So it was her, and it was in those months. I just told my brother in a few months, she's a different person. The only thing request that I made for the Romanian and everything, I said, keep her away from any actors, from anything. Nobody teaches her anything. We
Mm.
will work around what she is. And that's why so much of the unheralded, you know, tip of the hat should go to somebody like Lee Pace. Because, the
Yeah.
cliche in
Unsung
Hollywood, they
hero of
always
those.
say,
Yeah.
yeah, they always say in Hollywood, don't work with animals or children because they'll just steal the show. And she's doing what she's doing. Lee has to talk to her, move the story where it needs to go. She has a rough idea. He has to light her because she'll move here, and then he has to go
Mm.
here because he's aware of the 2 cameras that are inside the sheets. She's kind of seen the cameras, and after some time she forgets because she fell in love with Lee, which I knew would happen. So it
Yeah.
was just something like that. So for me, Lee Pace was incredible in being, to use the jazz cliche, to be that familiar with the subject matter and then forget the notes.
Yeah.
So he was doing that. And she was just trying to figure out what the notes were. And whatever she would come in with, the first time would be all over the place. Second take was 95% of the takes. And about third or fourth, she started acting and it would go horrible. So
Yeah.
for me, it was always in that magic thing. I had to get it.
Yeah. No,
But I
he did.
digress. I don't know. I forget what the question was. But
Um,
okay.
I'm just enjoying chatting.
All
I
right.
think he did an amazing, because he's delivering an amazing performance of his own, while still sort of in the back of his mind keeping the ship at least vaguely on track.
Yes, and
it's
it is so difficult for you to understand. An Indian guy comes to you. I'm going to put this together. We're going to do this. We're going to shoot it in I don't know how many countries. It ended up being 28. We're going to go everywhere. I'm going to do this thing. And he told me later when we started. And I told him whatever happens the rest of our lives, we will all be known for this project. And not many people when they do a project like that are aware when they make it. It's always in retrospect they'll do it. And he said he always thought like that's the kind of shit every director says before a movie starts. And I was like, I never said it before, I never heard it, and I didn't want to say it again. I was so aware of that. So that when we did it, I just told him like this is going to be a one-off. But at the same time, you have to remember how difficult it must have been for them that I've gone with two, and there's a completely two different crews when we were released, apart from the DP and the production designer, in a place like South Africa. They think I'm making this really art house, intimate room of two people in a room. And then suddenly the rest of the people were like, this is the kitschest gay shit you're fucking making. No, what the hell
what
is
happened
going
to
on?
the English Patient that we were doing before?
So everybody's kind of like looking at that, and I just said like it's clear as mud in my head. I know how it's going to go together, and that was something that you have to think like, how trusting does an actor have to be? That they're standing behind the Taj Mahal, and he's got the lines of like I want to look at you until I die, and this thing, women they do this, and the style is so tableau-y. It's very Iranian
Heightened, it's very
Raj now.
theatrical, and
It's that, but the scene is very sad because in truth, he's ODing in the hospital. So I just had to tell them like it'll look like this, but actually it'll have really sad connotations. And he goes, okay. and that was it. And only every now and then I would hit a wall and not know what to do. And then it would come together sometimes, and sometimes it didn't. So I was making things up as we went. That's why the hospital is shot straight in sequence, because I just knew there's no way we can tell the girl what to do. So the
yeah.
first day she met him is the first day she saw him. Second scene is the second day. The third scene is the third day. I knew that kind of problem would make me address any kind of potential problem that could come from any language barriers or anything, and I'll learn from her. And boy, did we. Because
And I've heard it multiple times, so I'm sure it's true, but only the DP was, I think, the only person that knew Lee could walk.
he also didn't know.
Oh, he didn't know.
He always said that he felt so stupid because all the hints were there. And I'm just going to get some more coffee. He was kind of like, he didn't know. Only the editor knew, but he was never on the set. So
no one knew. Wow.
Well, no one knew except one actor, apart from Lee Pace. And that was the actor who was playing her father. Because what I did was I had to tell him, because in the script.
Oh, because he's the first bandit, and
because everybody had the script that said that the father is the bandit.
yeah.
But if I got that guy and then told him, hey, you're not the hero, I had to tell him. So I told him that this guy can walk, and when all this is done, he will take over the story because he becomes a father figure because her father is dead. He said, okay. So he was the only actor that knew, but he was never on the set. So for me, everybody, when we shot in South Africa, that's why it was quite traumatizing for people when we had to tell them that, Lee Pace can walk. Not for Katinka, for completely different reasons, because every day for her was like, oh my God, this is so bizarre. This is so weird. And then on the day that we were expecting a really big reaction to say like, hey, he can walk. She was like, oh, okay, so that's another strange thing. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like that, he can walk. And of course, everybody else was like, crying and angry. The cameraman had been with me for 15 years, but never, this is the first thing that he shot, because the cameraman that I wanted, I had to let him go 2 weeks before the shoot, because I'd been talking to my college professor all the time who had done the cell with me. And when we went out there, he kind of had made certain things that he wanted. I want this. And I told him, remember this. I am going to spend everything that I will ever make to finish this film. And everybody's contract it's very communist. It's very like everybody gets the same paycheck. From the janitor, the guy cleans the set, the focus puller, the DP, everybody. And nobody has anything else. I'm going to spend all my money on it. And if I give one person a different thing, everybody's contract becomes void, including the actors. But he just said like, oh, well, I can't really. And then the third time he said it, I just said, I turned around and my Colin he was the loader and he was just focus pulling that particular time. I said, do you want to be the cameraman? And he went, do you think I'm ready? And I went, oh, okay, I'm doing a commercial next week. We were shooting something, I think, with Beckham in Spain. And I just said like, oh, okay, jump, what do you call, come shoot that. So he shot that, and I told him, good, you feel confident? I told him, okay, I know exactly how I'm going to shoot this. I know the exact ratio, and I know how I'm going to finish it. So for me, I want you to overexpose everything by one stop, which DPs hate. There will be no latitude left, but I know exactly what to do with all things. I've done my tests, and I've done all of them, and I've been to all these locations. So he just came on. So for me, I had been working with him for close to 15 to 18 years. So he was like, hey, like, some other people were offended on the set, thinking like, why didn't you trust us? I said, it has nothing to do with trust. Colin's been with me for 15 years. He's crying on the side. And, and I didn't tell him. So it's got nothing to do with you. And it's got even less to do with, when they say method acting or anything like that, it's got even less to do with that. It's got more to do with there is a child here, and the child just needs to believe that this person is doing what they're doing genuinely. Because I just said, if you do that, otherwise, what happens is, you can do a Holocaust movie, you can do any film that you want. And when you're doing it, after some time, the Nazi jokes will come out, the blah blah will happen, people will start standing on top of the bed to fix the lights. If a guy's playing a handicap, they stop, they just invade your space, and it becomes, because they know they're all acting and putting on a set. But for me, I just thought like, if they think he's a handicap, and that's what happened, people don't stand on your bed. They move very slowly around you. They do all that. So that took the whole energy down to where it was. So I was ready for all of that. What I was not ready for is how much children are scared of handicaps. So when she saw him in the wheelchair and everything, the first day, she would not go near him. And I just said, well, just come. And she was thinking, no, she was just scared of him because she saw him get out of the wheelchair. And I just said, okay, well, play the first part by the door. Then you come in here, and then he sits. So I just learned from her that that's what she would do, that she would come here, she stayed further away, then she gets closer. Next time she's on top. Third time she's on top, and she closes the curtain. Fourth time she's lying down with him. And then I had to pull her back from him because all she wanted to do was touch him and kiss him. And I was just thinking like, okay, she was completely in love with him. And I knew, her father was not in her life. So I just knew that everything was primed for whatever she does is the correct answer. So I just had to make sure that nobody else, and we were lucky because Lee Pace had done one thing at that particular time, and IMDb wasn't really big back then. He had played a woman, and nobody would recognize him. He had played a soldier's girl. He had done only one thing. He had come out, because I always thought I will find the guy from a school, because I said nobody should know this guy. But when I saw Lee Pace, I went like, oh, I don't have to go to school. Nobody knows this guy. So and he had an incredible voice, which I remember Nico just said, that's 80% of the movie. Is this guy telling the story? And I went like, that's correct. So for me, it was tailored around that. And of course, the kind of things that can be, so problematic worked in our favor. The first day, she shows up and her front two teeth were missing. And if you're in a
So
studio,
perfect.
you're dead. You just, because it should be CGI, sometimes she'll have teeth, sometimes, and I just went, no, 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 no. We'll just make it like, the strength is in the teeth. And then we wrote the mystics part that, he's got his strength in his teeth. So at the most critical time when this guy's supposed to be really brave, his fucking teeth come out, and he plays like this guy who's, coming out from chemo. His hair fall off and everything goes out. So we just, whatever she would do, we just worked towards the strength. And as she went forward, her teeth came out slowly, slowly, and that worked. And the other thing that I was not ready for is that she didn't speak English very well, very little. But every day, her learning curve was quantum. So that after about 10 days, she was speaking English, but with an Indian accent. So then I just said, what I'll do is the father, the guy who's playing the fantasy guy, I told him that I will tell you many scenes. I will talk to you. You tell her. Because she would hear me and she would ape that accent every now and then and start rolling her R's and things like that. So that was just
beautiful.
something that I controlled a little bit. But we shot all the hospital sequence, everything. And on the last day, we told them that, he could walk. And some people were angry. Some people were this thing. The person who had a right to be angry was the local focus puller, who unfortunately was not the best because we couldn't get our A group because the cameraman that I was going to originally get, he had a very aggressive approach to things, and I just said like two things will go bad. One, the child should know that there's only one madman on the set. If he thinks somebody else, and I never shout and never do anything like that. And that cameraman used to. And I just said, something like that happens, something will break in the child, it'll never come back. So I moved on, went with Colin. And then a lot of the people were afraid of the original cameraman and didn't basically, like wouldn't sign up for the film. So we ended up with a third tier in South Africa. And I got this focus puller, lovely guy, and there's some really hardcore shots that should have never been soft. I mean, the girl, it kills me till today. The next rendition, I might clean her eyes up. She's lying down, she's not moving, the camera's here, and her eyes are soft. So that kind of stuff just kills me, but nobody notices. They're just watching the girl. But so for me, they're going with this. Yeah, so the focus puller, on the day when we started the movie, I said, the wrap party needs to be before we start shooting because I don't know when my money will run out. I don't know where we will be in the world. So we did the wrap party before the shoot. And on that day, because Lee Pace on the set and everybody, he had to come in a wheelchair. He was really depressed by the 4 weeks we were over.
Oh,
Not
I
from
can imagine.
because it took like hours he could just get up and get in, but it would take so long for that whole thing. So that he basically that it was just going to get tougher and tougher for him to do any of those things. So on the wrap party, I saw Lee Pace sitting in a wheelchair, and I looked around, and there was another guy in a wheelchair, an older gentleman, talking to him, and Lee was red, and he was kind of motioning me, and I went over, and I heard the conversation, and so that was the focus puller's dad, and he was saying, you know what? Every time when people play a handicap or a cripple or something, in Hollywood and everything, they just always get people who can walk and run around. Hats off to this director that he chose a handicap. And Lee is like, fuck, 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 fuck. So he told me, we have to tell him. I said, no. I said, I have a guy I've worked for 18 years, and I'm not telling him. I'll take the hit. Let it go. So on that day, when we told everybody, I could tell the focus puller just went like, whoa, like this was really unfair. And then I went up to him and I said, I'm so sorry. And he just walked away. He didn't for good reason. He didn't want to forgive me. And he just said and I said, okay, it's fine. So that person, I think, had a leg to stand on. Everybody else was just a bit shell-shocked and surprised.
It's after weeks and weeks, I can imagine. I did want to ask you. I've heard you talk about how taking commercial jobs in the places that would enable you to shoot.
That was
in
the latter
locations.
end. Yes.
But how you found some of these places in the first place, it's incredible. The places like what's it called? Chan Bowery, I think.
Oh, you mean where Darwin gets killed?
It's an Escher painting.
The stepwell
Real life.
You mean the stepwell where Darwin gets shot? Yeah.
I still can't quite believe that's a real place.
Yes. Well, I kind of knew one thing, that people want something like, in America, they'll go like, yeah, and they'll go, yeah, you want sand, there's some stuff off on the beach. And I go, yes, but I wanted much more special. And I was lucky, that was Jennifer Lopez, that we got lucky for when I just said, I want to shoot in Namibia. And they just said, but we have deserts in America. What do you think? America has got everything. I said, yes, but not like what this thing looks like. Not even the Sahara looks as majestic. It needs to be
it doesn't look real. It looks like Mars.
Yes. So I had all these places that for years, it was the other way around. I was shooting these commercials and doing the deep forest video and everything, finding these locations, making connections, and I realized how difficult it is to shoot in these places. Because when you do, location scouts, because I did all that on my own, is that when people do that, the first thing they do is to say, okay, where are you going to park the trucks? Where are you going to park this thing? Where you eat? And now is there a location nearby? So then everybody, does that. So for me, I just thought these things are going to be difficult. So I'm going to find them and I'm going to stick by them. So as we went, all the time I was aware of them. I cannot tell you how many we had. Religious riots, stonings. We ran away from a place 3 times, but I still would not give up that big step sequence where he goes up, where the first attack happens. the Ladakh
Oh,
we
yeah, yeah.
went to. All those places are very, very, very difficult to shoot in. But that is why people have not shot there before. This one is a rare one. Chandimori is actually it's here. So this the sequence that you're talking about. I have a picture of it here. That one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically,
This is the one that a friend of mine, when they watched, I would not believe that
yeah.
this was the one thing where, because I said there's no CG in any of these,
Yes.
that was
Here's
the
the thing.
one that they said, no, bullshit. I don't believe
That
you. There's no
that
way
has
there's
been
that many people.
that has been around for about 300-400 years. Nobody ever filmed in it because, like, we were in some place and there was water, and I saw these steps going down, and I just said, like, "What's that?" They go like, "Oh, these are steps." And I said, like, "How down do the steps go?" They said, "Oh, long way." And I said, "How down?" He said, "Keep going, keep going." I said, "Well, but it's full of water always." And I just said, "What are they for?" They said, "Well, it was a way to tax people." So what it was you knew where the water level was. Once the water went higher and those steps are lower, you knew how much rain you had had. And that's how your grain was taxed. So it was something aesthetic. At the same time, you had to walk down the steps to get the water. So I just said, like, "Oh, so but how down does it go?" They said, "Well, if there's a drought, it goes like way down." I said, "Find out where there's a drought." And the guy came to me and he goes, "Oh, this place outside Rajasthan, in Rajasthan near Jaipur, we are going there, but there's this thing." And he showed me a picture. And I went like, "So everybody shoots there?" He said, "Nobody ever shoots there because it looks like shit." And I said, "Says who?" And then I realized that nobody in Bollywood or Hollywood had ever shot there. So I just said, "Okay, get that location. I will shoot there." So we shot that sequence. And of course, it took me, because once the critics saw the film and nobody wanted to buy it, and even for free, nobody wanted to take it, that I ended up in 4 years in that particular time. People in Bollywood were saying, like, "So where did the same shoot? Because he shoots kind of like cool shit. So where did he shoot?" So this, they went to the Blue City and they would go exactly to the house I went to. And they said, "That angle, yeah, we don't need to recce anything else." So that particular sequence with those steps, they just went, "He shot here, but oh, okay, so it must be cool." So before my movie came out, three Hindi movies had dance sequences on those steps, whereas that's been there for 400 years, and nobody ever thought of shooting there because it wasn't cool. So when I filmed that, actually, if I understand correctly, when they were doing one of the Batman films, the one with Tom Hardy in it,
Yeah.
Nolan
They
wanted that.
didn't use it, but they made a.
They had to make it because they went out there and then they realized, actually you can only shoot the angles that I shot. There isn't another way to film it. So they built that as a set in Manchester, and it's just a small little thing outside the steps. But my thing was, I can't afford any of these. And you have to remember that I was shot all those times that we were shooting for the 4 years. I had no dailies. I would just shoot and people would go, "You know how risky that is? That if something goes wrong," I'd go like, "It doesn't matter. I can't afford to go back." So if it doesn't work, it's done. It has to work. So we never had this thing. I had no dailies. I just shot it and I edited it in my head. Like, this will go from this. They go down to a green thing. We'll go there. So, and I was making this stuff up. So when we were in Ladakh, somebody said Moonscape. And I said, "What's that? That sounds interesting." They said, "Well, there's this terrain like this." And I said, "Oh, let's drive this." "How many hours?" 7 hours. Nothing there. You'll have to take your tents. I said, "Okay." I drive out there and I find this thing. And below, I see that there's a smaller stream with a small little green field in it. And I go, "Oh, that's
I
great."
was going
So
to
this
ask if
guy
that was
runs
all the
there.
same location.
Yeah, I just say he just runs down there, and I just said, "What will you do after that?" I said, "Well, then we'll somewhere in the world we'll find a green location." So that was 3 years later. So for me, I just shot that, and he goes, "Where you going?" "It's green down there," and he just goes down there, and the next location, we'll come back, we'll find another place. So all those were found just to go to take the story where it needed to go.
So in that instance, you found the location, and then presumably the mystic's line about "come with, follow me to greener pastures" was added because you
That's
found
the
the greener pasture.
No, I made that line up because we used to have this. You know what the strangest thing is? It's something that my niece solved very recently. And I was quite shocked. She used an expression and she said, like, "Oh, no, you're my uncle." And I always, this is the niece in the tricycle, that video that I told you, the Deep Forest one. She's the genius of the family. And she turned around and said, like, "Oh, I shall not, you did this, I shall not want." And I went like, "Wait a minute, what does that mean?" And I realized, like we were forced to do Bible studies in school. And I remember there was a line out there that never made sense to me. And when she said that, I said, "Oh my God, I shall not want" means like I won't need anything because I'll have everything. I never understood that, because the line in the Bible is, "He leadeth me to greener
Greener
pastures."
pastures. Yeah, yeah.
To greener pastures, He maketh me lie down, and the Lord is my shepherd; I shall not want. And I was like, wait a
Every
minute.
kid in the world's going, shall not want what?
What? No, my thing was like, that sounds like a really creepy uncle that's trying to molest me. Like, he's trying to make me lie down in these green pastures. I don't want to lie down on those green pastures. And we used to sing this song, we used to say it all, and it never made sense. So when niece said it, it made sense to me. So I was always obsessed with that line. And like, he leadeth me to greener pastures. So when we were out there, I just need him to go down. He said, "What should we do?" I said, well, let him just say, "Follow me to greener pastures." And then later on, I added another line in there, which is when I realized when the mystic is dying, the birds are coming out from him. And basically, so then those are lines added in post. When I saw the sequence, I said, Luigi could just say, like, he just said, like, and he said, "No, that's actually in the other sequence when they first find the mystic." And he says, like, the birds in his belly tell him blah blah blah, and of course later on birds come out of it. So that's actually reverse engineered later. But for all of these sequences, when I'd just go like, well, I know this much, and then our money runs out. Then next time we do some commercial somewhere, let's look for a green place. And I found Bali, and I just said that's got a great valley down there. And we were shooting surf commercial in Fiji. And again, there's another transition that we made up on the day, that as we were going to Fiji, all this thing, I was shooting this commercial with all these surfer, Ronaldinho and Beckham and everybody, and I needed the best this thing. So I had a very good relationship with the client, and I told him Fiji is the best water. He said, "Does that mean you'll do it?" I said, "Yes." So I took the whole crew. We shot there, but when we were shooting that sequence with I wanted the bandits to be on an island, and
Oh,
then
the Butterfly
suddenly,
Island.
yeah, no, well, that happened there. So when we are driving to some particular place on the shoot, the guy goes like, "Go by Butterfly Reef," and then we'll go there. And I said, "What that thing?" I said, "Why is it called Butterfly Reef?" They said, "Well, apparently from top it looks like a butterfly." And I went, "Right, go
Oh,
hire a
hello.
helicopter." I said, "Hire a helicopter." So we hired the helicopter, and then I just said, so Darwin is obsessed with butterflies. I'll do a transition to the butterfly, and they're abandoned in this particular one. So that happened because somebody said, swing by Butterfly Reef. And I just went, okay. So all of those were kind of coming together later over the years.
Speaking of that sequence, I had no idea until I saw this film that elephants could swim.
Yes. Well, that's something I had done close to 30 years ago for a commercial for Pepsi.
Oh, I
Sorry,
remember
for
that. That's you
Coca-Cola.
as well, was it? That one. That's a
Commercial.
beautiful
That
ad
one was
too.
actually, that
Look
was
at that.
Coca-Cola. It was Coca-Cola. And what it was that an elephant, and I worked with them on the idea because I knew that elephants can swim. Even most Indians don't. But I had seen it in Jacques Cousteau's documentary, and basically I knew that that they swim, and the main thing was that very few areas you can't force them to swim. They'll swim if they can see, if they can smell another elephant in heat for mating or anything like that. They'll swim oceans. So then they'll go into it. So I just went like, okay, so where? They said Andaman Island. So it's one of the most difficult places to shoot, to get to. So I was probably the only person that had ever shot. So 30 years ago, I went and shot this commercial there. And I just said, okay, I will come back because they use the elephants there for lumbering. And I just said, I'll come back and I'll shoot here. So that was something I had in mind because I remember the idea of that commercial was the same. An elephant swims up to a woman, he gives her a Pepsi, he gives her peanuts and takes her Pepsi. And I said the idea is the same, that a donkey comes to a woman, gives her a carrot and takes a thing. But the thing is, most people don't know that elephants swim. That's the charm of it. So the idea of, so I would just come up with things like they're on an island, they need to get off the island. So the guy says, "I can't swim," and just has these kitschy lines. And then we say, of course you find an elephant because Darwin, like comes up with that idea. Who steals from my favorite character, who never
Wallace.
becomes a character? Wallace. You know the
That's a
story of
lovely
Wallace
little
also?
nod to people who know much about Darwin.
Exactly. That was because originally I always wanted to do a film about Wallace. And for a very different reason, I stopped it because for me, I always thought like what a fraud Darwin would be. I mean, Darwin is a hero of mine. But the thing
Yeah.
of it is, he goes to Galapagos and he sees this, this stuff, and he comes up with this theory in his fucking 20s that these birds are on this island and somehow these fruits can only be opened by those beaks. And the other, all the guys can tell what island the birds come from the fruits and everything. So he comes up with this theory, but he knows what a bombshell he's holding in his hand. He's religious, his wife's very religious, and he keeps working. I'll work this theory, I'll release, I'll release. And then suddenly, 30 years later, a fucking guy from Indonesia writes to him and goes like, "Hey, listen, I think I got this theory, and I think," and he basically puts it out there, and Darwin takes that to his friends and says like this thing, and I just sort of like, wait a minute. So this guy sat on this bomb for 30 years. I said, isn't there a story to say that? Imagine that you're a very good professor, you know everything about it, and somebody comes up with the most breakthrough idea in the world and tells it to you. You go like, I've been thinking about that thing for a while. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it. Ask my friends. And that's what Darwin did. And the friends told him that, look, this guy has all this theory. And Wallace was like, yeah, if you think it's true, why don't we publish together? And that was it. And Wallace, of course, disappears for different reasons from history. So for me, I wanted to make that film until I realized, I did the research and I realized how much research Darwin had. He knew what he had. He had
Yeah.
been working on it for 30 years. So it wasn't this, like just let's steal that guy's thing and take the credit.
Yeah.
So I just thought like, let's make that. So when that went away, I just thought like, oh, I'll tell you what. So I made this character Darwin, and I just said he steals his ideas from Wallace, and Wallace is a monkey. So I made Wallace the monkey, and he just talks to him. Of course, I've always wanted the monkey to sit on his shoulder. India being India, I go out there and they said, yes, we have a monkey and you can have him. And he goes out there and I go like, that monkey looks pretty feral. They said, no, he'll be fine. He said like, here, see, he makes the monkey sit and the monkey bites the holder. And I'm like, okay, monkey's not going there. So I just said, okay, you know what? So,
Monkey in a bag.
the production designer, I said, yeah, find a bag. Design a bag that always is carried, by this guy. And in the bag, he opens and steals his ideas. So that came from there, just because the monkey should have always been, I wanted him like a bird. I wanted him Darwin's shoulders always. I could have gone with a bird, but then a bird's death was never going to be as tragic as, a monkey's
My
death.
13-year-old daughter was in love with the fall until
That part
scene,
happened.
and then
people
she
always-
cried from there till the end of the movie. Didn't care when the human characters died, but oh my God, Wallace destroyed her.
They're like infants. When you look at them, they look like an infant. And all that sound from the monkeys, of course, like drugged out of his head and just like lying there. That's all my sounds. And that's what all that. So I did a lot of the ADR. And suddenly the monkey is a lot more emotional.
But it turns out in the end, because I think there's something, it adds something that Wallace is kind of in the bag and Darwin's almost pretending that the ideas are all his own and the others aren't seeing him, which wouldn't have worked if he was on his shoulder.
Yeah, that's true. But the bird or the monkey could have just said a chip, 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 or the bird could have said like chirp, chirp, and he would have just said, oh, I have an idea. So I would have played, that's what it was designed with. But they all know that he's got this bag with goodies and maps and all that in it. And that is also the person who he steals the ideas from. So for me, I think it would have been good if he had seen Wallace a little bit more, but I just couldn't afford it. He just bit the handler, and I just said, he's going to do worse things to the actor. So just put him in the bag.
Yeah, I couldn't. I thought I wasn't sure whether at 13 she'd kind of get everything, but loved it all the way through. And then, oh God, fuck!
I know people.
Almost went down.
There's always something
like,
that
why
breaks.
did you make me wait? It was like when she watched Dead Poets Society. Got to the end of that.
I know. I just always find that very shocking when people will go like, "Oh, this was fine there, but don't touch the animal and don't kill the dog." And I go like, "Yeah, you'll go to another culture and he's actually dinner. Like you might not like it, and it's all okay for me. I don't judge. I just go like, if that's what people like to eat, that's what they like to eat. The only thing I'm against is making the thing that you want to eat suffer. And for me, it's very difficult when I see, all the agenda of people saying don't eat dogs and all that and fighting against those particular people. I go like, there's a better fight to be had, and that is that right now, probably in every culture, people believe that nothing bred up properly, is that bile, adrenaline tastes bad. But in Indonesia and a lot of those places where I've seen it, in Cambodia, is that the dogs thing, or even in China, is that they believe that the adrenaline and the fear makes the meat taste better. And it's the most horrendous thing that they do is that
Yeah.
they have all these dogs. They watch a dog pulled out of the cage, skinned alive, and then cooked in such a way that the other dogs panic and see that and everything, and they're shitting and peeing, and all their adrenal comes out, and that comes out, and that's what you do. You make them suffer because you think they taste better. And I would just say, spend some money, let them eat dog meat with torture, I mean with adrenaline and without. Do a double blind taste. If they say, if they can all spot it and say like, you know what, the one with him fearing is better, I say, okay, then go ahead and eat your dog. I would bet you money that no, it's just like a lot of those things that they have about, the poor man's Viagra in China is, it's always, tiger bones ground into blah, blah, blah. It's
Yeah.
all this fucking psychological shit that the moment you double blind it, it doesn't mean anything. So I would just say double blind that, show them that if you're going, please don't eat a dog, but if you're going to eat him, don't fucking torture it. So I just say
Yeah.
the same thing about cows and anything like that you do. I mean, to the Hindus, that is like, sacrilegious, like you react to dogs, that people eat beef and they eat cows. And I just go like, oh, I see that too. And I just say, you know what? As long as it comes in and they go, hey, look over there, dunk, the cow's dead, I'm okay.
Yeah.
So they're bred for that. I just say you can't stop
There's
it.
a difference between the circle of life and cruelty.
Yes. It's, and if you can get the cruelty out of it, I mean, nature is cruel enough, but we've evolved a little bit past, like that.
Yeah.
So if you can, please put some, like this thing, thought into that. Just don't torture them if you can help it. Don't eat them, because now when I see all the data coming out on how it's so much more sustainable to be vegetarian, I think that's the best argument. I'm so for it. It's just that they need to stop subsidizing the wrong thing. The reason fast food is so much cheaper is because it's subsidized for the wrong reasons. You can, like in a democracy, you can never take funds back. And right in the fucking 40s and everything is when all the sugar and the sugarcane and everything in America was subsidized for the farmers.
Yeah.
And now the moment you have their lobbies too strong to be, they not subsidize that thing, so they put it into everything. So all that meat, when you compare it to the vegan and the vegetarian food, is that subsidized is the reason it's cheap. Take it out. You
Yeah.
can't. You'll never get voted into power. So it just has to be something to say like, hey, if it was apples and apples, you'd be able to say that, yes, everybody should eat vegetarian, and they would. But when finances come into it and, you're a single mom or a single dad and you're trying to afford, good food for a child and everything, and money is a big issue.
It's culture as well too. I mean, cultures that have a long history of vegetarian, like in India,
South
the vegetarian food is fucking awesome.
South India.
Yeah.
If you go to North India, where I come from, the Punjabis, like we guys, they eat like anything that used to move. So for me, yeah, when you go south, yes, that is they and they're vegan down there before it was cool to be vegan. And so I have a
But the
niece
foods,
who's
the nature
vegan
of the
now.
cuisine is that the vegetarian dishes are just as good as the meat dishes. But you come to the West, have some cabbage.
Yes.
It's a lot harder
Meat was the
to
main
convince
thing.
people.
Yeah, it's a tough one. But then right now when you go to the West, there isn't a place where the kitchen isn't international. So it's okay.
No, that's true.
So if you're looking for it, you'll find it, and all these apps and everything. I just thought I do a lot of road trips across America. And one time I did my niece, and she's militantly vegan and just very irritating for me. But you know what? It was phenomenal. She just, where we were, she would tap onto it, and they said, there's a vegan place right there. And I was like, fucking white man magic. Good. If you can find it, let's go eat it. And I'm not going to go out of my way to not be able to make the trip because a vegan is by me. But she made it work. And I just realized, the technology is there. It just will take a little bit of time that, to undo to a certain extent the damage that has been done by the food triangle that was sold to America on, you have 5 pasta dishes a day and all that, until you realize this was, a study paid for or corrupted by the people who were selling you pasta. And they just turned it on its head, and now you have an obesity issue.
I'm just noticing the time, so I've kept you far too
I'm
long.
okay. I got nothing to do for another half an hour. I'm good. Let me know when
So
you're done.
I was going to talk to you about Immortals and Mirror and how great they are, but I do want
Try
to jump.
to see the last film that I've done. I've only done 2 personal films.
I did want to, yeah. I was going to jump to the only one of your films I haven't seen, not through want of trying.
Mm. Well,
Tell me about Dear
hopefully,
Jassi and what,
it's a
how it
very
goes out,
personal
and why I
film.
can't see it.
Well, I hope that changes in the next few months. I'll go and have a chat with Mubi if I can, is because that one I don't control so much, but it's the only second, like director's cut that I've had. So you have The Fall, and then there is Dear Jassi. It's very hardcore, and it's a
It's a
completely
heartbreaking story.
heartbreaking and also very disturbing. There's
Yeah.
not, so it's not visually disturbing. That's the irony of it. That just where it goes is very uncomfortable for
Oh,
people,
it's
which is okay by me. But so for me, when I
it's.
put that in, I
I
just
watched
literally
Dear
was,
Zachary. I can watch anything.
uh, well, I don't know. Try
Ooh.
to see when you can with this. It is pretty pin drop silence by the end of it. It's a completely different style because I love Iranian cinema. But I just literally thought that if this is the film that if Gaspar or Haneke wrote a script and it ended up being directed by one of the Iranian women. It was my approach. So like because they'll deal with really hard subject matter and put out there for you. Whereas the Iranians, when they say anything confrontational, let's go to the other room. So it's
Mm.
literally that the way it's shot, and that's a lot more disturbing. So for me, I think in about a month and a half when I go to London, I will try to. I mean, like, hey, The Fall took 20 years before it got a release. Now, all I'm hoping is that this movie doesn't take 20 years. And again, it's getting very few people saw it, and it's getting a cult following only among them. So I'm hoping that it gets some sort of eyeballs on it because it's the second, like personal film that I've done. And there's another one that I'm now going to start writing with my niece. And those are completely unadulterated, and there'll be of course lower budgets. The Fall was unlimited because I had a lot of money and I just said like, hey, I don't know what to do with it. It's going to go into it's going to go into my child, and that was it. So The Fall got it, almost bankrupted me, and I was like way okay with it. And I said if I had another idea like that, I'd sell everything and do it again. I just don't have an idea like that. The other ideas, they don't warrant that kind of globe trotting. So they're simpler, but some of them are hardcore ideas. So let's see how that gets put together.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I, I keep my eye on the internet. I'm
I
super
think
keen to
good.
catch it,
I think
but
please do. I think you know what the reason the Fall thing happened was because Dear Justice. I went to Toronto with it, where we won, their award, and it's the only time I think any film of that hasn't had a release that won their, award. And we went out there, and their big award for that thing. All the press wanted to talk to me was like, so why can't we see The Fall? Why can't we see The Fall? And I was like, where the fuck were you 20 years ago? I was giving it away for free. The critics were shitting on it, and the critics were telling me how much they loved it. And I was just thinking like, okay. And I turned to my brother and just said like, okay, let's spend the next 4 years and put this together. I'm not 4 years. Let's spend the next 4 months. And I worked really hard, and it was a blessing in disguise that I met FA. And I just said, like, this is a freebie. You'll have it. I just want eyeballs on it. It just needs to get out there. And I think it worked out because of that, because I was there with Dear Jassi. So I hope it doesn't take another festival when few people will say, like, how come I can't see Dear Jassi? And then somebody, but the thing is with The Fall, I controlled everything. So I could afford to give it away for free and just say, I don't care, I don't care, it has to be like this. That one is fun, but I think it'll happen because right now they have nothing from it anyway. So I'm hoping that somebody like Movie or something will give it eyeballs and then they can take it out.
oh, fingers crossed. Certainly for everyone watching, it's been a long time coming, but we've got 4K to sell. We've got this
Hey,
incredible
you
umbrella
know what? The
release of
funny thing
this.
on that one is, I love that box, and they're going to send me that now. I just wrote to them yesterday. The only sad thing is, I think the interview on that one will probably, because I'm always full of energy when I talk about The Fall. But that one, if it's got the video that they did, I bet you sounds like me really angry. Because I literally was in LA when they said somebody's coming to interview you for it, and I'd forgotten the thing, and the person showed up and they interviewed me, and they'd never seen The Fall. So for me, I love to engage with people. I talk to them, and when they talk to me, I tell them, and then they take the conversation, and then I can take it somewhere else. But this person had never seen The Fall, and I'm looking at him and talking to him about The Fall, and I was just like, I will never do this again. I mean, if you're not going to see
I
it,
haven't gone through because I've literally only
good.
recently
Delete
received
that
it.
one then. Delete that.
There is a movie interview on there, which certainly doesn't sound like they haven't seen it.
No, no,
But I
that's
haven't
all good.
watched the others.
All those are good, but somebody from, because I love the box they made, and hopefully they will send me one. I just wrote to them, so they'll send it to me.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. The booklet, everything. Umbrella are doing really, really great things lately.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yes, I'll put links to the Umbrella and Arrow sites so that people can hopefully go and
I can
pick
see
up
people
copies of
from around
these.
the world that are ordering it. So I'm wondering if now, I guess you can order it from anywhere in the world, because originally it used to be regional. You couldn't see it in different regions. I
I
don't know
think
how
with
that is.
I think 4K is not region locked. I think
Fucking
4K
brilliant.
releases
Fucking
are.
brilliant. Because I think they did an amazing job. I think Mubi is supposed to put one out also, but I know Korea is going to do their own. And I was shocked on how it was received in Korea. And after 20 years, I went out there, they released it in December, and it did better than all, apart from Substance, it did better than all the movies that were up for Oscars this year. I was like, oh,
The people, because
they
we've all
released
been
it
waiting about 20 years to
20
almost.
years later, they released it in 20 cinemas, and I went there 3 months later, and it was still playing in 100 cinemas. It is something that's resonated with the Korean women. So I just went like, long live Korean women. I have no idea what happened. They just embraced it, and it was a phenomenal experience for me. I'm waiting because this year I think Japan is going to release it, and I know because of Eiko, there is a big following there. With Korea, I was
Yeah.
not aware. I just went out there and I was like, whoa, I just, thank you for, watching my little aborted child.
Oh, look, I'll have to let you go. I could honestly talk to you for hours, but
And no problem. And bring
you're a
your
busy
partner
man.
on next time. I don't know where he's gone. Tell him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when he gets, he is very, very jealous. But hopefully, we might chat to you again about Dear Jassi if we can actually get
Wonderful.
to review it.
Well, I'm hoping in the next 2 months, keep my email,
Yeah.
contact me in about 2 months. And I will see if those guys will release it. Do see it. It is as singular as the fall, but from a completely different planet. So do take a look. I just hope it doesn't take 20 years for that to come out. I mean, two personal things I've done, and it's just beyond culty.
Yeah. Oh no, I'll keep my fingers crossed. In the meanwhile, I've just started rewatching Emerald City with the kids, so
Excellent.
we'll keep our Tarsem influx coming.
Thank you, sir.
How'd you hurt your arm?
I fell.
Me too. My name is Roy.
You tell me the story now.
What story?
The epic.
Close your eyes. There were 5 of them. They had one common enemy. Governor Odious.
What a mystery, this world. One day you love them, and the next day you want to kill them 1,000 times over.
Always stop at the same part when it's very beautiful.
I need the pills to finish the story.